Welcome back. Now, the newly appointed ANC National Youth Task Team has called for, among others, that the ANC NEC members, Tony Yengeni and Enoch Godongwana, be disciplined. The NYTT yesterday outlined its resolutions taken at its first official meeting, which was held over the weekend. The newly established body has been given 6 months to prepare and hold a national congress for the ANC Youth League. And it says that its top priority will be to give young people a credible voice in the governing party again, and that it will not promote factional battles within the mother body. Nonceba Mhlauli is the convener of the NYTT, and she joins us now for a discussion. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and thank you for having us.
Firstly, congratulations, Nonceba. And what are some of the first and, should I say, top priorities of focus for you?
As we said yesterday, that our task that we have been given, which is to deliver a national conference of the Youth League, we've been given a time frame of 6 months. And within that 6 months, we have to obviously look at the political life of the organization, the existing structures, the assessment of the structures, what needs to happen in terms of the provinces, the regions, the branches, but also how do we then, rebuild and revive the Youth League in terms of its body politics. How do we reposition the Youth League as an organization that ought to serve the interest of young people and rally them behind the banner of the ANC. But beyond that, Sakina, there's also the question, if you've been following Youth League politics over the last couple of years, of the legal status of the Youth League and the rehabilitation status of the Youth League since the liquidation process had started a few years ago. So at a legal level, we have to sort out the legal status of the organization, and that process is already underway. We're hoping to conclude that soon. At an organizational level, it would be to ensure that all structures around the country are in line with the constitutional prescripts of the Youth League in terms of membership, those leading the Youth League being under the age of 35 as per the constitution of the Youth League, and ensuring that the structures are alive as per the constitution of the Youth League as well. So those are really sort of like at a broad level some of the key things that we will be doing over the next 6 months.
So, Nonceba, quite apart from the legal issues, there is, of course, also talk about at a philosophical or at an ideological level, the position of the Youth League within the ANC. Some time ago, there was discussion in the ANC about doing away with leagues and reducing them to desks, which, some would say, given what has been happening with the Youth League over time, and there are those who argue the ANC Youth League has not been effective since Julius Malema's tenure. You yourself, I see on record as saying that even during Julius Malema's tenure, there were problems with the African National Congress Youth League. So, what do you say to people who would argue that the ANC Youth League has perhaps been non-existent for a while and it's been fine, its voice has perhaps not been missed? How would you basically push back at that argument?
So I think that there is some, valid points towards that argument, and I think that it's an argument that when it is made, there is, some truth to it. I don't think that it is entirely true that the voice of the Youth League has not been missed. In fact, if you look at, we over the weekend we had our first meeting, and one of the things that we actually said, the president was one of the people who came to address us, and one of the things that we were saying to him is that the Youth League had advocated for the scrapping of experience for entry-level young workers in government. And even though that resolution was taken by the ANC, it was never implemented. So that in itself, the fact that key resolutions that affect young people in South Africa are taken by the ANC and have not been implemented is actually an indication that you actually do need a youth league that will advocate for such things. What we also said, Sakina, is that the autonomy of the Youth League is sacrosanct, and we are happy that the ANC agrees with it, that we are not and we even said to the president that there's a difference between a youth league of the ANC and the ANC Youth League, because the ANC Youth League has a particular task, and that is to champion the interest of young people and rally them behind the banner of the ANC. And what we've seen, in fact, is that some of the problems that are actually within the ANC is precisely because you've had an absence of, a radical militant, but also a youth voice that is based on content, not just, being rowdy, but also providing solutions and saying that these are the things that we think that government ought to take forward. One of the things that we said we are going to do as this task team is to have sessions with each of our government deployees in the executive for them to take us through some of the resolutions that have been taken by the governing party as it relates to youth development in South Africa. We want them to tell us what they've done in terms of those resolutions, what the future plans are, and how we can assist in ensuring that at the end of the day, we don't just take resolutions, but they are also implemented at a level of government. So we do believe that, yes, our voice has not been as loud as it is supposed to have been because of what's happened over the past few years, but we do believe that we are now in a phase where we can reintroduce this whole notion of a youth league that is there to sort of keep the fire burning and ensuring that the ANC does deliver on its mandate. Because at the end of the day, our relationship with the ANC is naturally a complementary but also a contradictory one, where the youth league is supposed to agitate for change, it's supposed to agitate for implementation, and most importantly, Sakina, accountability as well.
And again, some youth watching would say that what the ANC Youth League has done well in the past perhaps was to agitate for itself, for its members, and not necessarily for the broader good of South African youth. You take some of the structures within our South African government sphere. You look at something like the National Youth, the NYDA, that agency, and what it has done. And some would say that has become the playground for some well-connected youth, politically connected youth in this country. How do you respond to that? And what would you do differently in order to make sure that these gains are not just for those who belong to the political elite, but to the youth of South Africa as a whole?
Sakina, that's a very legitimate concern, and it's a legitimate concern that we share. And you will remember that I, in fact, was one of the young people who had applied for the NYDA board last year. I have since assuming this role, decided not to apply for it this year, precisely because you want to deal with the reputational issues that have existed over time, wherein there is a genuine perception that, or a genuine concern that the NYDA board is the reserve of, a few people that are politically connected or have some affiliation with a particular party. And I do think that that's something that we are, obviously it's not something that we want to perpetuate. However, I also don't think that it would be fair for us to say that members of the ANC and those affiliated to the Youth League ought to not apply for, certain positions in government. I think that what is important is that, because that would be discriminatory, I think that what is important is that for us to ensure that the crop of young people, the 7 young people that ultimately get selected to form part of the NYDA board are the best among, the best. And we believe that there are millions of young people, very talented young people with diverse experience, skills, ideas that could really form a really great NYDA board. And we shouldn't say that those should be to the exclusion of members of the Youth League, because even within the ranks of the Youth League, you have young people who are extremely talented, who have amazing ideas. And I think that our obsession ought to be to get the best among us to lead that particular institution and other institutions as well.
So You know, speaking to not just the composition of the board of the NYDA, National Youth Development Agency, it slipped my mind a short while ago when I was asking that question. So not just speaking to the composition of the board, Nonceba, but the services rendered to young people in South Africa. Even there seems to be a legitimate concern that once again, it is the preserve of a select few. Also, in terms of looking at the application processes and what young people are expected to submit, you know, you, as you say, you had put your name forward for a position on that particular board. Explain to us how best can this particular agency be developed to meet the needs of all South Africa's youth?
So again, it is a legitimate concern. And I think that what is important for us is to ensure that services get to those who need them the most. So the NYDA, for an example, has offices all over the country. I think that they've recently, you know, reopened all the offices in the regions. And it even has this whole program around the National Youth Service. At the end of the day, Sakina, members of the Youth League only represent a very small percentage of the broader percentage of young people in South Africa. So let's say even if we were to say that there is a deliberate, there's a deliberate program to only reserve those programs for members of a particular party, it would be such an ineffective exercise, because the percentage of those members versus the percentage of the people that you're supposed to serve generally, that the difference is so, it varies so much that you would actually not be living up to your mandate as per what your POA is. So I think for me, the important thing is that for us to make an assessment of what are the needs of young people. We are saying that the biggest needs of young people is the issue of unemployment. How can the NYDA ensure that it has programs that responds to the issue of unemployment? There's the issue of young people who are not who are unemployed, but also not in any institution of learning, who are not getting an education, etc. How do we respond to that? How do we get the NYDA to partner with other government, not even just government institutions, but also in the private sector, to ensure that, those young people get involved in programs that will, develop their skills, and have some sort of a skills transfer program. There are young people who are involved in substance abuse, etc., etc. So I think for me, the most important thing is, if as an institution you want to deliver on your mandate as per what would be in your annual performance plan, it is inherently, in fact, it would inherently mean that you'd have to look at what are the needs of the people that you're supposed to serve in, which is your primary constituency, and what programs do you put in place to ensure that not just at the level of government, but how do you partner with civil society and your private sector, etc., to ensure that at the end of the day, your reach is much wider than what you can actually afford if you were to just do it alone. So yes, it is a legitimate concern, but I do think that there are programs, in fact, I know that there are programs that are already in place to ensure that that particular concern is addressed at the end of the day.
Mm. And, just looking at something that you said earlier about the Youth League reclaiming that vibrant position of being a militant arm of the African National Congress, how do you see that playing out in 2021? I'm looking at a poster here. I'm not sure how legitimate it is, but it is doing the rounds on social media. It says Monday, 12th April 2021, and this was for the ANC Youth League eThekwini region. Car spinning, entertainment at the KwaMagaba Library. How do you reclaim that once illustrious position that the Youth League held?
So the first thing that we said this weekend is that we have to revive our 7 cardinal pillars as the ANC Youth League. And linked to that is the program that was adopted, which is, economic freedom in our lifetime, and how do we bring that to light? I think the most important thing, what we've also said is that we don't want to be a youth league of just rhetoric. We want to be a youth league of programs, because it is programs and their impact that are going to change the lives of young people. And we understand that because we've been in such a long phase of rhetoric and slogans, and just really things that have no impact. But what we want to do is we haven't developed our POA yet, obviously, and once we do sit down and craft it, the most important thing for us will be the issue of local government elections, to ensure that how do you respond to the concerns of young people on the ground. So if you are going to say that in your local government elections program, if the concern is that there are no young leaders that are put forward that have ideas, etc., that is something that we will champion. And we've even said that to the governing party, that going into these local government elections, we want public representatives that, one, are committed to a life of service, and not people who are going to behave as though they are doing us a favor by being in public office. 2, we want public reps that are going to be available to their constituency, and not people who are going to disappear after they've been sworn in. We want people who have ideas. We want people who are going to come with innovation, and not people who are going to speak about a program that happened in 1994 when I was 4 years old. And we want people who actually do the work, and who won't come and say and have excuses that X couldn't be done because of 1,000 different excuses. And we believe that criteria is best represented in a new crop of new youth leadership that is emerging in this country. And that's where we should be looking at in terms of what the future of this country is. Comrade Khalima Motlanthe actually gave us an induction on Friday, and he said something, quite profound, that the best way to prepare young people is to give them roles of responsibility. So for them to, obviously to grow into, leadership roles, etc. So we believe that going into local government elections is actually the first step towards the ANC saying that we believe that if we are going to change the perception and the manner in which young people or youth leadership is being viewed in this country, we need to start by taking the existing crop of youth leaders, because we have them. There's no shortage of great young leaders in South Africa. All you have to do is to give them the responsibility to provide leadership, and to move away from programs that actually just don't have any impact. We don't want a situation where you have a 6 months program that will tick a lot of boxes, but at the end of the day have actually no real impact in terms of changing the price of bread.
And to that point, we are running out of time very fast, Nonceba. You think on a Monday, calling young people on a Monday against the backdrop of unemployment that you have yourself outlined, against a backdrop of a pandemic that has devastated the economy and has a very severe adverse impact on young people, calling young people to a spinning show, that's not very cerebral, shall I say. Do you think?
Again, I haven't seen the poster that you're referring to, but as I said, we can't be a youth league that has programs that do not empower young people. So whether it is a spinning show, whether it is, any other a program that doesn't have an impact in the lives of young people, that's not what we should be concerned about, and that's not what our focus is. Our focus will be having programs that have a real impact in changing the lives of young people in South Africa. So I completely, if that poster does exist, I completely agree that that's not where our focus ought to be. And we need to shift our focus towards having real, tangible campaigns and programs that will ensure that at the end of the day, a young person who's set without a skill 3 months later will have a skill that will be able to empower them. A young person who sat without a degree and who couldn't get into a TVET college, 6 months later is enrolled and is getting an education. A young person who's struggling to get their business registered and struggling to get funding, 3 months later, that person is able to open their offices. So that's really the kind of programs that we are concerned about and that we ought to be concerned about. And that's the shift that I was talking about, that we need to move away from the cosmetic things that we've been doing to the things that have a real impact at the end of the day.
And 30 seconds, Nonceba, literally, the issue of discipline, and you've been very vocal on this on the weekend as well. Any specific reason for singling out Tony Yengeni and Enoch Godongwana?
First and foremost, we didn't single them out. If you look at our statement, we actually said that we are quite embarrassed by the conduct of the National Executive Committee as a whole. And we said that to the President, that we believe that when the NEC sits, South Africans are waiting for the NEC to provide leadership and to come up with solutions to the problems of this country. We do not expect to hear voice notes of people insulting each other. And that we find to be quite appalling, and that we find to be quite embarrassing. And we actually said to the President that we want the whole executive to go to political school, because clearly there needs to be some, some political schooling or political education happening. The issue of the two comrades was purely based on what would have emerged out of those clips. We even said that there also needs to be an investigation on who recorded that meeting and who leaked that information, because that in itself is ill-discipline. So it's really a holistic.
So we have to leave it there, Nonceba. Unfortunately, when I said 30 seconds, I meant unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but I think we get the gist of your explanation. But good luck, and thanks so much for speaking to us this morning. Nonceba Mhlauli, from the convener of the NYTT, speaking to us there. This is where we have to say goodbye. We are out of time.